what's up guys, this is Nick at Stridewise.com, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the 6-inch service boot from Chippewa. So Chippewa was founded all the way back in 1901 by two German immigrants in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And at the time, Chippewa Falls was a burgeoning logging town, so there was a lot of demand for really rugged work boots, and eventually that demand led Chippewa to grow into the company that it is today. Most of the boots are made in the US, some are made in China, and Chippewa says that their boots are intended to honor the loggers and the engineers who build their roads and construct their buildings and everything like that. Now, they have a lot of really rugged work boots out there, but this here is their service boot, and it's a bit more fashion focused than some of their other models. So let's take a closer look. So the Chippewa service boot is pretty typical of the American work boot aesthetic. It's got this nice round toe, it's got a Goodyear welt, it's got the cork midsole, and it's got the Vibram outsole. Other than that, there's not a ton to talk about as far as the appearances goes. It's pretty simple. It's mostly single stitch, although there is some triple stitching along the vamp here. And the most noticeable thing about it is that it has the logo of the company etched into the upper right here, which I wasn't a big fan of, but it's going to be hidden by the cuff of your pants most of the time anyway. Now, the most common term used to describe Chippewa's boots in general is entry-level boot. This is not a particularly expensive boot. A lot of boot aficionados aren't really blown away by the quality, although there is definitely a loud contingent of folks who feel that for the price, this is pretty decent quality. Personally, I think they're pretty comfortable, but quality control-wise, I did notice that within a few weeks of wearing them, I started getting some loose threads here. You can see that there. And also the sole is also starting to detach there as well. So personally, I haven't been blown away by the quality control, but then again, they're very inexpensive boots. All right, so let's talk about this leather. This here is called Crazy Horse leather. It's the most popular leather used in the service boot. It has a couple other leathers there, but this is the most popular version of it. The first thing a lot of people like to say about this boot is that it doesn't really look anything like it does online. If you check it out on Amazon or on Chippewa's site, it looks more like a light brown. But as you can see, it's more of a sort of golden color, which I really like, but you are going to want to expect that when you get them out of the box. Now, it got its name because it was used in horse saddles back in the day, but Crazy Horse is not made from horse. It is in fact made from full grain steer leather. Full grain meaning it comes from the top layer of the animal's hide, which means it's also pretty strong and pretty durable. Most people want their boots to be made of full grain leather. When I spoke to Chippewa, they described it as an oil-treated leather, but Crazy Horse is really well known for the wax. So this is made by applying a kind of wax to a full grain leather that's been smoothed out a little bit. And the wax strengthens the leather fibers to the point where when it's scratched or rubbed, the color changes. So it has this really rustic vintage appearance that a lot of people really, really like. Now, one of the most common complaints that you hear about Crazy Horse leather and Chippewa boots in general is that they don't age super well. They start to age pretty quickly. These boots are not new at all. And as you can see, they have started to wrinkle a little bit, especially around the upper, around here, around the shaft that is. So that is something you're going to want to keep in mind. They do age pretty quickly. Nonetheless, I like the way they age. Now, when it comes to taking care of the leather, it's not crazy complicated. You can just use a horsehair brush to get rid of extra dust and grime at the end of the day. If they're really dirty, you can use a cloth dipped in water and just clean like that. It's pretty simple. You just want to make sure that it's left to dry in a well-ventilated area at ambient temperature. When it comes time to condition the leather itself, Chippewa told me that you need to remember that it's an oil-treated leather, so you want to treat it like an impregnated leather in order to maintain the moisture. And to that end, they like Apache cream. That's their favorite product. When I asked if you can use Venetian shoe cream instead, they said that's probably going to be fine as well. So that's if you're just wearing the boots if you're not putting too much damage on them, if you're wearing them around town, if you're wearing them in more of a fashion-focused sense. If you're really putting these through the ringer, if you're working really hard in them, if they're getting really dusty and grimy, if you're in the rain, in the snow, you may want to waterproof it. And if you want to do that, they recommend Aquaseal. That's the best product for that if you're really going to put these through the steps. Now, when it comes to sole, this is a Vibram sole. And when you compare that to a lot of its competitors, like the Wolverine 1000 Mile, it's not quite as classic looking as some of these other more old-fashioned sort of boots that have leather soles or oak soles. But when viewed from the side, it doesn't look chunky or ostentatious. It looks like perfectly fine. It has a pretty low profile. Plus, it offers a lot more grip, which I like. I'm always a fan of Vibram's functionality, even though aesthetically, I'll admit, it's not that great. But anyway, you get the Vibram outsole. Then there's a cork midsole, which is very classic looking. A lot of people like that. There's a steel shank for stability and arch support on the inside. And the inside isn't really lined. There's a bit of a leather insole, but it's on top of a canvas liner, which does support the boot. You see that in a lot of like Red Wing boots, but it does make for a boot that's pretty stiff. This isn't a very soft shoe, and as you can see here, there's no extra layer of like rubber or leather under the heel, so it's not great at shock absorption either. That's something you might want to keep in mind. Finally, it has this 360-degree Goodyear welt all the way around the sole, so that makes it a lot easier to replace the soles as they wear out, and it also makes it pretty water resistant as well, so that's a big bonus. Now when it's time to pick your size, you're going to want to order a half size down from what you normally wear in like your sneakers. So a lot of boot companies run large, and for me, I'm between an 11.5 and a 12 on a Brannock device. But most of my boots, my Red Wings, my Wolverines, my Thursdays, I'm just a size 11. And the same thing happened with Chippewa. So I'm an 11D in Chippewa's boot, and it fit me really well. The D is the width of the boot. These are also available in E and double E. So that's good news for guys with wider than usual feet. But if you have very narrow feet, if you normally get a B or a C, or if you have an extremely wide foot, you normally get a triple E, you're gonna be out of luck. There are just 3 widths available for this particular boot. You might have some success just ordering different sized shoes and just to see where you land on that. But yeah, there's no real guarantee that it's gonna fit you if you have unusual widths of your feet. So you might find that a little bit disappointing. When it comes to breaking them in, they didn't really need much breaking in. This is relatively thick leather, so I was a little bit worried that I was gonna get blisters or something like that, but they're pretty good from the get-go. They crease pretty quickly, which is a little bit of a disappointment, but not a big surprise for boots at this price point. And as far as comfort goes, I do have to point out that it has a very hard sole, so there's no real lining here. There's also no, like, say, leather or rubber on the on the heel here to offer some extra support. So it felt kind of like I was walking on wood, and there wasn't very good shock absorption. So I would have liked either some lining or an extra layer in the heel to help remedy that issue. Now when it comes to the price, these shoes on Chippewa's official website and on Amazon cost about $280 for a pair. So when I say these are considered entry-level boots, that's what I mean. It's a bit unfair to compare them to boots like Red Wings Iron Ranger or Wolverines 1000 Mile because those boots are like more around the $350 mark. These are under $300, so they are firmly an entry-level boot. The quality, it's not absolutely fantastic, it's not the best quality boot you can get. But for the price, it's not too terrible. Okay, so why should you get a pair of Chippewa service boots? Well, first of all, I like the way they look. Just personally, I think they really do have this good old school American work boot aesthetic. It's got the nice round toe. It's got this like white Goodyear welt. I think it looks good. It's a good classic look. The leather, Crazy Horse leather, it is popular for a lot of people. I'm the first to admit it did crease pretty quickly, which was a bit of a bummer, but nonetheless, I just like the look of it. I think especially in like more casual outfits, like just like khakis and a denim shirt, that kind of thing, I think it really makes an outfit pop, especially because the leather is this nice sort of golden color that you don't see very often. Looks-wise, I think they're pretty good. Now, on the other hand, they have the Goodyear welt as well. Goodyear welt is always seen as a mark of a good quality boot. It's pretty much always seen as a plus when you're looking at a pair of boots. And another good thing about that is I did not particularly like the heel or the sole in general, and with the Goodyear welt, it's very easy to replace the sole. So that's a bonus. It's got this Vibram sole as well. It's very resistant to slipping. There are a lot of boots out there, especially a lot of boots that call themselves work boots, but they have like a stacked leather sole or an oak sole, and they just like slip a lot anytime the ground is a little bit wet. These, they're more, they're more durable, they're more functional than a lot of other boots that are more expensive. Speaking of expensive, these are not very expensive. The price point is pretty good for these boots. They are under $300. I'm the first to say they're not the best boots in the entire world. They're not the highest quality boots you can get, but at least the price is relatively low for that. So a lot of people are going to be happy with the price on these boots. Now there are a few things you might not be quite so crazy about with the service boots. First of all, real quick, there aren't a lot of widths available. If you have narrow feet, if you get a B or a C, or if you normally get a triple E, you're going to be out of luck. They only offer about half of the widths that are normally available. You might find that pretty disappointing. The main issue with these boots, now a big plus side for these boots is that they are relatively inexpensive, but the downside is these are relatively inexpensive. I mean, they're cheap boots, A lot of people, even though these are $280, they're still gonna feel like it's not quite the right price for the quality that you're getting. As I mentioned, I'm getting some loose threads around here. It's fraying a little bit around some of the corners of the leather, and the heel is already on its way out. If I really pulled this off, I could definitely get this heel off right now. It's gonna naturally come off in the next few months anyway. Now, for the price point, a lot of people think that's fine, especially since, as I said, They are good looking boots. I do like the way they look. I've got a really good aesthetic about them. Nonetheless, there are still going to be people who weren't that crazy about them. And then also one thing I want to mention, comfort-wise, it fit my foot relatively well. It didn't have great support. I would have liked some stacked leather or rubber here on the heel. It's very hard to walk on. Now it is a Goodyear welt, so I can always replace the sole, but I don't want to have to replace the sole. I want a comfortable shoe, you know? So it really is a matter of individual preference as to whether or not you're going to feel it's worth the price. But yeah, personally, I was a little bit disappointed with some of the quality control issues. Alright, those are my thoughts on the Servus boot from Chippewa. The full review is in the description below, and make sure you subscribe. I've got a bunch more boot reviews coming up.